Hey everybody. Hey everybody, and welcome, and thank you for joining me here on this live stream, this special one-of-a-kind live stream where we're going to talk about the job interview question, tell me about yourself. And is it a question? It's more of a statement or a directive, but anyway, usually job interviews start with this, and this has got to be the stupidest job interview question that is in the repertoire. And I have heard so many stupid responses from recruiters and from potential candidates about this, and I wanted to discuss this today because I hate this question. I know a lot of you guys hate this question, and there's all kinds of advice on how to answer it, and we're going to talk about everything today. We're going to talk about what to say. We're going to talk about what not to say. We're going to talk about why you shouldn't say certain things, and we're going to talk about the motivation for why people ask this in the first place, okay? Now, this is inspired by a comment that somebody sent in. Let's see if I can pull it up here. Here we go. Okay, so this was the comment that I got among many on this topic. And this is from, wow, XXX Gaming. Awesome. It says, it does not make sense since the recruiter should already have read the resume. Have already read the resume. Okay. So let's get into this question here. There's 23 of you people here. You guys are awesome. Let's get into this. Okay. You go to a job interview. You sit down at presumably the table. You're across the table from one or more interviewers. Usually at least one of them is a recruiter of some kind, somebody from HR, as opposed to a hiring manager who would be the boss of the person who gets the job, right? So two different roles. And you sit down at the table, and the first thing usually a recruiter will ask you is this question. They say, thank you for coming in, have a seat at the table, thank you very much. And then you sit down, and they say, so, tell me about yourself. This is the icebreaker, okay? Now, first of all, this question is a complete cliche, okay? This has been a standard job interview question for at least 50 years. This goes way back, okay? And so somebody who asks this question to me is signaling that they don't know how to have an actual real conversation with a person, because this is a very forced and artificial thing to say. Not many people weave something like tell me about yourself in a free-flowing casual conversation that you have in a sort of low informal situation. You don't usually say this to another person. So it's a very artificial thing and a very formal kind of way of expressing yourself. And I got to say, I hate it. So number one, right off the bat, if you go to a job interview and the interviewer leads off the conversation and breaks the ice by asking this, you're not dealing with the very good, oh God, I can't talk today. You're not dealing with somebody who has very advanced conversational skills, that doesn't easily try and create a lot of rapport with people. They want to keep it formal, okay? And usually you get more of that in larger organizations, but regardless of the setting, it's usually not a great way to really assess somebody, okay? So right off the bat, the reason why recruiters ask this question is because of tradition, period. It's not particularly good. It kind of, it's like starting a conversation with, wonderful weather we're having for this time of year, don't you think? It's just such a cliche. Or starting a video, you've seen that before. They go, oh, didn't see you there, but you're serious, right? You're not saying it as a joke. You're serious when you start that. And you think it's, you don't think it makes a fool of yourself, or you come across like an amateur. That's the equivalent of what we're talking about here. Why do you say this, Bill? I say it because I've taught recruitment and selection in universities, okay? I understand the theory behind this. I understand the thinking on it. And when this is done from a position of training, that's why it's taught. That's why people use it. It's not a particularly good question. Now, over the years, what's happened is recruiters have built up this sort of mythos around this question. And I've seen such arrogant responses from a lot of professional job interviewers where they take pride on saying, when I ask this extremely general question, which, you could say almost anything in response to it, and that would technically be an answer to the directive. they like to pride themselves on saying, when I ask this extremely general question, you better give me a very specific thing that I'm looking for. And if you don't, that shows that, you're not going to work out, right? I think that's absolutely ridiculous. That's the most ridiculous, idiotic thing I've ever heard in my life. This is not how we interview people, as evidenced by the fact that if you were to go for an executive type job, nobody does this. This is only done at lower level jobs, okay? Because it's amateur and ineffective and silly, okay? So I want to say that. Now, this is the thing. If somebody asks you an extremely general question, all they're trying to do is they're trying to break the ice and get some kind of conversation going. Okay, fair enough. So they start off by asking you a very general question. Now, here's the deal. What you choose to say does kind of signal something about you, okay? If you're super nervous and you don't know what to say and you haven't prepared for the question, usually that'll show, okay? If, however, you're a normal person and you've done some preparation, for a job interview like most people do, but you're not expecting sort of brain tease questions like this, you might not have prepared for something like this. So the question is, when you're a candidate, okay, and you're being interviewed, what are they probing for? What are they looking for? Okay, and more importantly, what would they consider red flags? Okay, that's what becomes relevant here. Now, let's start off with the classic answer to this question, okay? I think the most popular video on my YouTube channel? No, it's not the most popular. It's one of the most popular. I've done a video a long time ago about how to answer this question. The short version is that if you're the candidate and somebody asks you, tell me about yourself, what I and many other people recommend is that you basically give a summary of your resume. You say, well, and then you start with your education. Well, I have this educational qualification. I've got a law degree or, whatever it is. And, or I have a degree in this. And then you summarize your work experience in about 45 seconds or less. You say, so I have this degree. I got it from this university. That was about 10 years ago. My first career job was this. I worked for this company in this role. I was there for 2 years. It was some great experience. Then I moved on to this role at this other company. And in that role, I learned about this. I got some experience being a supervisor for the first time. And then after 5 years there, I moved into my most recent role at this company where I did this and worked as a supervisor. That was my role. And, it was in this area. And, it's really good. No complaints, but I'm looking for something more like this other thing. And now you're describing this job that you're interviewing for. And that's what brings me here today and why I'm excited to learn more about this opportunity. Right? That's basically, in a very short version, that's how I recommend people answer this question. Okay? Now, the theory behind this is that, you see, if you've sent in a resume or a job application and they've received the job application and they've read your resume, and then based on that, they called you in for an interview, the implication is that what you've written on your resume, none of that stuff sets off any red flags for them. It's clean. It's safe. Okay? So if you tell them that information, you're not risking putting your foot in your mouth and saying something that, unbeknownst to you, gets you eliminated. Okay? And in the past, I've made a point about ridiculous things that can get you eliminated. And other sort of benign things that can get you eliminated, right? For example, let's say they're looking for a candidate that's really got some sales skills, and is very charismatic. That's what they have in mind for who they want to hire. Now, they haven't disclosed this on the job posting because if they were to disclose that, every candidate who comes in to be interviewed would fake having those traits and that ability. Whether they're being genuine or not, they would know that they're looking for someone who's very salesy, very charismatic. So maybe they would go out of character to be more like that, to kind of fool the interviewers to think that that's how this candidate really is. right? So they intentionally leave that off the job posting because they want to get a glimpse of who people actually are, and then they can get an honest impression of them and then select the person that, fits what they had in mind for that stuff, right? So that's the reasoning behind some of this stuff, okay? They don't tell you precisely what they're looking for because they want to get an honest glimpse of who you are, and then they'll make a selection based on that, right? Now, job interviews, especially job interviews that have like multiple rounds to get the job, they're based on elimination. You start with like approximately 10 candidates that you interview, and then you've got to reduce that down to one that you select, right? That's the recruiter's job, or the hiring manager, or both. So they're looking, especially in the first round, they're looking for things that just can obviously eliminate you, okay? So if you come in and they happen to be looking for somebody who's very salesy, very charismatic, and maybe you're a technical type person and that stuff doesn't come naturally, maybe you can fake it and you're highly trainable and you're working on improving yourself, so it's not a stretch for you to do it, but it's not your natural sort of way that you carry yourself, So you go in there and you're talking to a recruiter and a technical manager. And because they're a technical manager, you figure, okay, I won't be super salesy and, charismatic and all this. I'll just be very businesslike, matter of fact, and answer their questions. And unbeknownst to you, by doing that, you've eliminated yourself in this case. Right? Now that's stupid. You could totally do the job. Turns out, if they'd have given you that job, you'd have be able to pick up on that very quickly. You're very intelligent. You're very trainable and malleable. You'd be able to meet their requirements and excel in the role, right? But they're eliminating you because of some stupid, superficial, cosmetic thing. So what's the solution here? Well, the solution is, like I said, when you don't know what they're looking for and you don't know where they're going with this, it's just a sort of very general icebreaker question at the beginning. Let's start with the basics, okay? Let's give them the Cliff's Notes from the resume. I have this education. I worked here for 2 years. I worked there for 5 years. I worked here for 2 years. And I'm excited to be here because I'm interested in this type of job, right? You didn't reveal anything new, anything that could be unsafe, right? You stick to something that's tried and true. If any of this information was an issue, they wouldn't have called you in to be at the interview, right? So that's the idea. Until you know more specifically where they're going and what they're looking for, then you can speak more specifically to that. Okay, now that's where this comment comes in. Okay? It does not make sense since the recruiter should have already read the resume. Yeah, I know. They should have read the resume. Everyone knows this. And I get this kind of condescending sort of attitude from a lot of recruiters that comment on my YouTube videos and on stuff on the internet and that talk to me. And I think it's hilarious because, yes, in theory, in a perfect world, recruiters would be professional and they would be good at their job. And some are. But I got to tell you, a lot of them aren't. As most of you probably know, if you've ever been to job interviews, you look at the comments on my YouTube videos when I talk about job interviews. You look at other people on the internet who've done videos and things on job interviews or written articles about it, and the comments are full of people with horror stories about how recruiters haven't done seemingly simple, intuitive, basic things that they should have done. So a common thing actually in the real world is that you show up at the job interview, and in theory, the recruiter and hiring manager should be familiar with your resume and your job application, right? Since they presumably looked at it and called you in, but they're not. They can't even remember who you are. They can't remember which candidate you are and which one are you? Oh, you're this one. Okay, what's the story with this person? And they don't know it, right? How many times has that happened to you where you show up tell me in the comments, we got a chat thing going, and just for fun, if that's ever happened to you, let me know in the comments. I just want to go and read a couple of these while I have a chance. Hi, Bill. This is from WCK Champion. Hi, Bill. I may be weird, but I think that this question is the easiest. I always answer with, like you suggest, I'm a positive, experienced professional who, and say how I match the requirements. Well, okay. I mean, that's not really what I recommend. It's not the worst answer in the world, but that technically is not what I recommend for this question. Okay, I think this is a stupid question. It's so general as to be useless. If someone says to me, tell me about yourself, I'd say like, well, I'm 5'10". I'm this age, I'm this weight, I'm this blood type. I was born in this place, and my mother and father, these are their names, and this is when they were born and where they're from. I mean, I'm telling you about myself, right? Is that the information they're looking for, though? No. Right? Another person could come along and they're asked, tell me about yourself. And they say, well, I'm really, really passionate about cosplay. And then they talk about, when they got into cosplay and how everyone in their family does it with them. And they travel and go to events and conventions to do cosplay, right? And why it's so great and all the skills you learn and how it's made you a better, more professional person. You have the discipline to do it, blah, 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 blah. That's an answer to the question, tell me about yourself, right? Is this what they're wanting to know? Probably not, right? That's why this question is so ridiculous, because you have to be a mind reader to get this right. The other thing I don't like about it is that what you have to do varies depending on what level your job is at, right? So if you're getting like a basic entry-level manual labor job, like let's say you're 18 or, whatever, you're going for your first kind of job. It's a job on a construction site. And, usually the interview, such as it is very brief and very basic. And they might say, so tell me about yourself. And you say, well, I'm 18 and I'm here to work. And they go, okay, you're hired, right? I mean, that was easy. However, if you are up for an executive type job, okay, they're posting a job, it's divisional vice president of operations, or a product line, or a operations in a certain country, okay, and you're up for that job, and you're there with a panel of people, and the first person says, so tell me about yourself, right? Obviously, if you talk about your hobbies or your family or whatever, right? The fact that you think that that's relevant, sorry, that's a red flag. That's a deal breaker. Okay? We're looking for very specific things here, right? So it depends what level you're at to say, oh, this is the right answer to the question. That's the other maddening thing about this. Okay, back to I'm curious. So back to the chat here. Okay, Ask and It Shall Be Given says, hello, Ask and It Shall Be Given. That's an awesome name. Yashu Sharma says, thanks for your advice, Bill. I got a few offers and was able to get what worked for me in the new role. Okay, awesome. Congratulations. Tomi, is that how you say that? Tomi, how do you apply to entry-level jobs that require you as the entry-level talent to already get 5 years of experience? Oh, that's a different question. Okay, short answer is obviously that's a total contradiction. What that suggests is that part of it is incorrect. I know they're saying it, but it's not actually true. Either it is not, in fact, an entry-level position, or the 5 years of experience, that's not actually absolutely required. Okay? That's what that means. So one of those two things is incorrect. You just have to figure out which. Okay, if you go in there, like let's say it's truly an entry-level position, you go in there with a lot of enthusiasm, you're great to deal with, you have answers to all their questions, but you're just coming right out of school, you don't have any 5 years of experience, they'll probably hire you regardless, right? It depends on also who you're up against. So, there you go. Suhail, if I'm saying that right, says, I applied your advice on how to answer that doggone question, LOL. Oh, did it go okay? Crystal says, interview tomorrow. Advice? Yeah, do preparation. If you can get a friend or family member to help you do a practice job interview, that helps a lot. That's a lot of bang for the buck. Okay. And remember, what they want to hear is that you have all the things they've said they're looking for and a lot of, soft skills that are common sense that you would need to do it. So you don't tell them you have those, you demonstrate you have those. But other than that, that's all the advice. Good luck. Remember, it's a numbers game. Okay, Tomi says, I think it's so unfair when jobs do this to entry-level talent. They expect entry-level already to be 5 years plus and pay them. Yeah, of course. It's stupid. This is why these are not great ways of getting jobs. You get jobs, you get the good jobs, and you have a much more positive experience if you get the jobs through networking. Okay, so anyway, yeah, this question, tell me about yourself. That's the thing. It's like, it's a general question. And the other thing is that I've heard recruiters, like I've mentioned, I've heard a lot of recruiters that say, oh, well, when I ask this question, you better answer with what you're passionate about, because that's what I'm really looking for. My answer to that is like, well, listen, if that's what you're looking for, why the hell don't you say it? Because you know what? Not everybody is a mind reader, and not everybody has done 1,000 job interviews like you. Okay? This is an entirely artificial situation. You're not saying literally what you're wanting, and if you're expecting, especially for lower level jobs, for younger people that haven't done like tons of job interviews, if you're expecting them to pick up on that, you got problems, it's so stupid. It's a waste of everybody's time that you're eliminating people based on something idiotic like that. Okay, if you want to know what their hobbies are, ask what their hobbies are, for God's sake. Don't say, tell me about yourself, and then just expect them to know that you want to know about hobbies. It's like, that's so stupid. I've heard so many recruiters say that to me. Not about hobbies, but replace the word hobbies with any random thing, I want to know what you're passionate about. You better tell me what you're passionate about, or else there's a problem. It's like, it's silly. It really is. I feel so sorry for, some young people that get subjected to that. I have horror stories of when I was younger, 20, 30 years ago, going to job interviews, for professional positions and getting this kind of treatment. It's like, what is this? Like some kind of, like what's with the mind games? What do you want to know? Just tell me that. But this is the reality, and what you've got to try and do is get past this kind of baloney to where they're actually seriously taking a good look at you and seeing if you have what it takes in terms of the technical skills and in terms of the personality. Okay? So yes, I can't tell you how many times, like, not to go on like a broken record about this, but I mean, there's been so many answers, and people have written that sort of stuff in the comments to my YouTube videos too. And it's also a defense mechanism. They get very testy because they're trying to outmaneuver you with these silly questions. And the fact that I could do a YouTube channel or any other form of like teaching you how to pass the questions, and not just me, many other people give advice on how to pass a job interview. The fact that they can give you advice on how to answer the questions and you can pass based on that, that kind of demonstrates that the interview is not really assessing you for who you are. It's assessing you on superficialities. So the idea is to get past these ridiculous superficialities so they can take an actual good look at you as much as is humanly possible and make an assessment before you're actually working. Okay? I've been a hiring manager. I mean, I was a CEO. I ran a company, and my policy was, you take your best guess and you give people probation. You like the first 6 months of probation. Let's see how you actually are. Once all the masks are off and everything, let's see how you actually perform. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, it'll be pretty obvious to everyone. You can't assess people accurately with this. They want to get to know you, but they don't want to invest the time to get to know you. It's silly. Okay, where did I leave off here? Because I'm just curious what people are saying in the comments there. That's good to hear, Suhail. I'm glad that it's going well so far, it seems. Tomi says, yes, exactly. I wasn't selected for a job because I didn't express what I was passionate about. Yeah, it's like, and the other thing is that they don't actually say, what are you passionate about, right? What career-related area are you passionate about, if any? If they had asked that, you could maybe speak to it. You see, this is revealing like a bias towards more extroverted people that are, have got maybe great sort of conversational skills. They have that human intuition and emotional intelligence. They can maybe like read between the lines on what you're actually asking, right? So right off the bat, you are biased, or all of the people that are like introverts, that are technical people, that are detail-oriented people. They work in technical jobs. Already you're biased against them. This is unfairly stacking the deck against them by asking sort of, this sort of wordplay mind games type question, right? I mean, somebody could have a PhD in engineering, but you're going to eliminate them because you said, tell me about yourself, and they didn't talk to you about their passions. I mean, that's ridiculous. And I've seen stuff like that happen. This is why I have this attitude. Not too many things really rile me up, but this is one of them. So that's why we have to engineer ways around these lame, I want to keep using words like stupid, but stupid questions. If people are going to eliminate you on how you answer, tell me about yourself. Yeah. Tomi says, I was so pissed. Now, pissed, hopefully, that means in the North American sense, not the English sense, right? Pissed means you go to the bar and you drink about, 10 pints of beer, I guess. Hello, thanks for your advice. You're welcome. I don't know if I've given much advice so far. I've just sort of ranted about it. But but no, this is the problem with this question. So listen, getting back to what we should do when asked this, okay? Now that we kind of know what's going on, how kind of silly this is, first of all, we'd like to get off this question as quickly as possible, okay? I'd like to get to the point where you ask me much more specific questions so I know kind of more precisely what you're looking for here, okay? Just saying, tell me about yourself, and then hoping that you give them gold and you don't eliminate yourself based on a criteria that you're unaware of, is kind of silly. So we want to get off this question quickly. So that's why I say, very quickly summarize your resume. Start with your education and then give a very brief overview of your work history. I worked here for 2 years in this role. I worked there in 5 years in this role. I worked here for 3 years in this role where I gained this experience. And now I'm looking for something like this. And you better say something that resembles the job you're up for. And that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm excited to learn more about this opportunity. Okay? Now, in the past, I've advised people as almost like a mnemonic to remember how to answer this question. You start with, as you can see from my resume. Now, that works if you say it right. If you say it in kind of a condescending way, well, as you can see from my resume, I have this. The nonverbal communication is that, oh, didn't you read my resume? I mean, it's on there. Why should I have to say this to you? If that's what you're really communicating, obviously, people do not appreciate that. They will take offense at that. They will find your answer somewhat combative, and it won't do you any favors. But if you say it in like a very benign way, you say, oh, well, as you can see from my resume, I have this education and blah, blah, blah. If it all depends on how you say it. So if that's going to be an issue for you, you can omit that line. Just start by saying, well, I have this education, and then go on from there. It's useful as a mnemonic. Okay, it's useful to sort of jog your memory. Okay, I remember the answer to this question. It starts with this, right? That's what that line is for, but it's not absolutely essential as long as you give the meat and potatoes of it. You give your education and your work history. And the important thing is to not take 5 minutes to summarize your resume. Practice like getting it really condensed, okay? Just the basics, just the facts. Just the factsy maxi. I got some comments on my YouTube video saying, how the hell am I supposed to summarize my resume in 45 seconds? That's stupid. It's like, what? You can't do that? Yeah, you just give them the absolute bare bones, right? So that's very important. So remember, if you're just starting out, maybe practice that a few times. That's pretty important. Okay, because you do not want to take up half the interview with this question. Okay, this is a stupid question. It's an icebreaker. It doesn't reveal anything good. And if they do go into great detail with it, it's usually not going to be good for you. So you just want to sort of start the conversation with this, get off this question as quickly as you can, give them a professional, polite answer, no red flags, and then get to the more specific questions that come later, right? The greatest question that you want to be asked in a job interview is not this one. I think someone was talking about it earlier, was a WCK champion was talking about that. Somebody was saying, yeah, it's the question where they say, why should we hire you? Right? What are your strengths? Why do you want to work here? Those are all the same question. You answer by saying positive things that you have that fit with what you know they're looking for. Right? So if they've said in the requirements, we're looking for this and we're looking for that, they say, oh, why do you want to work here? And you say, oh, I'm so glad you asked me that. I'd like to work here because, as I understand it, you're looking for this and you're looking for this and you're looking for this. And I have those. You're also looking for this. I got that. I got that with bells on. You're looking for this. I have that too. And let me just put your mind at ease because I understand that you're looking for this, 2 years experience in this. I don't actually have 2 years. I only have 1 year, but I have this type of experience with that. So don't worry. It's not going to be a problem. I got that too. Right? That's the question you want to talk all about and give lots of information on is, why are you qualified? Why do you think you meet the requirements? And then you can speak at length to that, give them all kinds of reasons to hire you. And then on top of that, you say, well, I'm really excited about doing that kind of work. I've wanted to move in that direction to do that kind of work for a long time. All that kind of stuff. That's what you want to be talking about in a job interview. Not spending time on, tell me about yourself, right? So we want to get off this question as quickly as possible so that we can move on to giving them compelling reasons why they should hire us. I don't know if I was good. This wasn't really going to be a Q&A, and there's a lot of comments. Let's see if I can just briefly, very quickly see. Where did I leave off here? Okay, Crystal, what are the best questions to ask at the end of an interview? Yeah, well, okay, that's asking about a different question. I have a video. I have like a couple of really good videos on that. Just go to my YouTube channel, and it's right on the main page. What to ask? Yes, that was what the recruiter told me. I meant generally advice on your channel. Oh, well, thank you very much. Tommy, a few days after the recruiter told me they didn't like that, I don't express my passions and my personal goals. Yeah. What do you think of mentioning your children in the resume in the interview? I would not do that. I got kids early, got my degree late, and now I'm kind of in a limbo trying to get my first job. You're a limbo? Like, is that where you go into the bar? Because that's pretty cool. But I think you're trying to say I'm in limbo trying to get my first job in the area I graduated in. No, I would not mention kids. Like, if they ask specifically about a work gap, okay, like, what's this work gap? Why is there a space of 2 years between you coming out of university and getting your first career job? What's that all about? Or you've been unemployed for the last, 18 months, according to your resume. What's that about? Like, if they ask you questions like that, then maybe you could mention like, well, I started a family and, I had a couple of kids and in that period. And so, it was almost like a parental leave, for my career. Right. So you can mention it maybe like that, but don't go into any more detail. You shouldn't need to go into any more detail about personal things like that. It's quite frankly none of their business. Depending on where you are, it may be illegal for them to really ask questions like that you need to disclose all kinds of information like about your kids and things. So, okay. Don't want to come across as too desperate. Yeah. Listen, I mean, the big elephant in the room for everybody who's like really having problems with this stuff, like trying to get a job, and you know what? Networking is where it's at. Okay. If you don't believe me on this, don't take my word for it. Go and do your own independent research. You know what? I don't have a web browser set up in advance. Listen, go to Google, like type in how do most people get jobs? Things like this. Do your own research. You'll see most people who have jobs got their job through networking, not by talking to recruiters and doing a job interview like this, not by responding to a job ad with a job application. Okay. If this is new information for you, the best thing you can possibly do is go and do research on that. Okay. Networking, how to get a job through networking. And no, you don't have to know a million people. That's not what networking is. That's like one teeny tiny thing inside networking. Just having happening to know a million people. That's not what it involves, okay? Anybody can do it. If you know nobody, you can still get a job through networking, okay? I've given lots of examples of how you'd go about doing that. Other people talk about that stuff too. So if that's all like this weird thing that you've never heard of, the best thing you could do for yourself is to go and research that. Okay. I've got some great videos on it, but it's a thing. Okay. Recruiters would love you to believe that the only way to get a job is to go to a recruiter, right? They have a vested interest in propagating that. If you ask a recruiter for employment advice, they'll talk all about finding job ads, responding to it, and doing job interviews with recruiters, right? They're not going to tell you, oh, I'm a professional recruiter, but in fact, if you want to get a job, don't talk to a recruiter. Just do it yourself. Go directly to the company. They won't say that. Okay. I don't want to come. Okay. Where are we here? Ziggy Stardust. At the interview for company director, I was told that I have to do an IQ test. I thought it was illegal to require this. Listen, look, there's all kinds of laws all over the world. I'm not in the United States, so I mean, I don't know all the crazy laws you guys have down there. But in some parts of the world, it's illegal to do different things during the recruitment and selection process. But no, an IQ test is not illegal. They can ask you for stuff like that. There's actually a huge area of hiring for like higher level jobs where they do psychometrics and all this kind of stuff. They'll send you to a private HR company to undergo a whole bunch of psychometrics. That's like becoming more and more common. I've had to do that stuff. And they release like literally 150-page report on you that they send it to you, and they also send it to the company, because they're paid like thousands of dollars to do that with you. That's it's becoming the norm for higher level jobs. Yeah, so I don't think an IQ test is off the table. I mean, I remember years ago, I was getting a job as like an engineer in training or something. I was coming right out of university, and they were giving you like, I don't know if it was an intelligence test, but they were giving you all these technical tests. You'd be in there all day, like solving math problems and logic problems and all this kind of baloney. So no, I don't think it's illegal in most places, although there may be some exceptions. Thank you, Ziggy Stardust. That's very kind of you. When it comes to networking, I have some university colleagues that I think I would do good in the areas I'm interested in, but I always get the answer that I need to go through the regular application process. Yeah, you see, they have a vested interest in doing that. They're going to send you within their own HR organization. The way you get out of that is you talk to the hiring manager, okay? Now, some companies are more receptive to this than others, okay? Certain large organizations, they, especially like government organizations where it's extremely formal, and they're, they will refer you. But like, for example, you want to talk government. Usually government is they're the biggest sticklers for procedure, okay? So they will funnel you into the HR organization. They will say, well, go apply online or something silly like that. As an example, I got a job as a teacher in a university, and I did not go through that stupid process. I did not, they have like a hiring portal on the web, and you fill in the forms and you send in your resume. I didn't do any of that. I contacted, it wasn't the dean, but it was somebody, it was like, I think some administrator through LinkedIn, and said like, hey, I'm here, I'm looking, somebody suggested I talk to you about, like a teaching thing. And they said, sure, well, come on in, let's do an interview. It's like, okay. And they said, oh, by the way, do you have a resume? I said, yeah, sure. It's like I gave them a URL or whatever, or I sent it. And they said, okay, fair enough. Come on in. We'll do an interview. No hiring portal, no filling in forms, no submitting your resume, nothing going into the void and never hearing back. And this is government. Okay, this is like usually the strictest people for procedure. Usually in the private sector, people care about formal procedures less in general, okay? I mean, there are exceptions, but across the board, usually they're less formal. And then also, as you get to smaller companies, they get less and less formal, okay? Now, the majority of employers out there are small companies. Once again, if this sounds weird to you, don't take my word for it. Go take 2 minutes, do a Google search, and get the answers. Like where I am in Canada, okay, in a particular part of Canada, Manitoba, 85% of people who have jobs here work in small companies. Small being defined as anything under 500 employees, okay? So that's where the people are working, not in the big, big buildings downtown. You see the big skyscrapers downtown, you go, that's where the employers are. No, they're not. They're out hidden in the industrial parks around the city. You don't drive by them. That's where the majority of people are working. That's where the majority of the money is. The companies with money to spend on employees and things, that's where they are. They're not downtown. They're not super visible. They're not in business to consumer. So they're not like when you go to the mall, all the stores you see, all the businesses, that's not the people that have the majority of the money or that hire the majority of the people. So it's less visible. It's what you see is not necessarily the reality. Okay. Any company that does business to business, their customers are not the public. Their customers are other businesses. They have absolutely no interest in being visible to the public. It's actually kind of an advantage to not be. You're under the radar. Nobody's going to steal from you, for example, or protest in front of you. They don't even know you're there. So that's where all the employers are, And most of those companies are small, and that's where most people are working. And that's a great thing. Because they're small, they're a lot more informal than what you might think of like in, say, a university or a large multinational corporation. So that makes it even easier to talk to the owner of the company, talk to the CEO, talk to the department head, whatever department it is. And they're much more receptive in doing that too. And a lot of those companies don't even have their own permanent internal HR people. If they do want a job posted, they sort of call up somebody outside the company. They say, hey, we'd like to employ you to do some recruitment for us. We need you to post this job. We need you to advise us. We need you to help us with the job interviews. And they go, okay, that'll cost this much. And then they do all the work for you. It's not internal. So if you are a candidate with some skills that you could help them, and they might be looking for someone like you, and you contact them and say, hey, I have these skills, and they happen to be looking for someone like that, they will thank you. They are glad because they save money in having to post that job. That's how these things work. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about that today. This is about tell me about yourself. But I just got sucked into your comments. You've got some awesome comments here. Where did I leave off here? IQ test. Tomi, well, I got 2.5 years of in-house experience as a junior graphic designer, but I'm looking to network to land a better junior designer position with better pay. Any help on how to network for this? Well, that's like a big question. It's like saying, I've never gotten a job before. How do I get a job? It's not something I can answer in like 2 minutes. Look, to learn how to do that, I mean, obviously, okay, I've got a course, right? My Get Hired course. I've even got a fancy little thumbnail if I can get that working here. Here we go. There's details in the description of what this is, but basically that walks you through several methods of getting a job. And it goes into great detail about this, how to get a job through networking. So if that's of use to you, consider checking that out. There's also another video I have that talks more precisely of how the course works. So before you pull the trigger on it, you can see exactly what you're going to get into. But basically, there are some principles that most people, especially when they're young, they're unaware of. Okay. I'm just trying to do this off the top of my head. I'm a technical, detail-oriented person. I have issues with simplifying things. That's a big challenge for me. I'm just overwhelmed by tons of detail. It's hard to simplify. I have to think to simplify. But basically, here's some of the facts that most people are unaware of. Number one, okay, people at the bottom of a company, the workers, they're hard to approach. They don't know anything. The people in the middle, they're usually too busy to help you. They've got too much to do. They don't really entertain queries from people outside the company unless it's directly a part of their job. The people at the top, unintuitively, part of their job, they're the most approachable because number one, they actually have the most time and flexibility to deal with you. Number two, part of their job is entertaining unsolicited queries from the public. If you say, "Hey, I'd love to talk to you," or I'd like you to consider me if ever you're looking for somebody, they'll say, "Sure, thanks." The person, they don't know who's contacting them, but it could be a journalist, it could be a potential customer, like industrial customer, institutional customer, it could be a supplier, it could be a government regulator. They don't know. So the best policy is to say, "Sure, let's talk." That's just how most companies do it. And I mean, I've been in the role, I'm speaking from experience. You get all kinds of people like contacting you constantly, right? A lot of times it doesn't go anywhere. It's just the equivalent of spam. But sometimes it leads to business deals. It leads to partnerships. It leads to opportunities. So, I mean, yes, it could also be the media. You know what I mean? So it's bad business to just not respond to those or not look at them or give like a nasty response or act so arrogant like, "Oh, you think I have time for this?" That's very bad business. So these people are the ones to talk to. Also, they usually tend to have very advanced social skills, conversational skills. They're not going to be these rude jackasses that sometimes you encounter when you're dealing with entry-level recruiters who ghost you and don't read your resume and don't know the first thing about the position they're hiring for. Okay. So this is the first thing that like most people don't know. Secondly, it is possible to contact these people in a practical, professional, and non-stressful way. Okay. People fear that it's almost like going to the principal's office and you're being stared down by this important person. And who are you to talk to them? It's like, no, this is a person who runs a 50-person company or smaller. Okay. They're the equivalent of like a teacher running a classroom. A teacher has 20 to 30 pupils in the classroom. I mean, how important are the teacher? They're not untouchable. They're not a celebrity. They're just a regular person, right? And the other thing is that usually in smaller companies, if you haven't experienced this yet, okay, in smaller companies, usually, not always, but usually, people are much more approachable and people are much more trusting than in large organizations. In large organizations, they play power politics. They have a vested interest in not allowing employees to have initiative. They have to ask for permission. They need to get approval for absolutely everything you do. You need to do everything you do, in writing because you have to cover your butt in case somebody tries to blame you for something. That's all large organization culture. Small organization culture is a little bit different. If you have a 20-person company, you can't be watching over all your employees at once. Some might work in a warehouse. Some might be out dealing with customers. Some might be at, an event making sales on behalf of your company. You can't be there to supervise these people. You have to trust them that they are doing their job when your back is turned, right? So it's a little bit of a different culture, a little bit of a different dynamic. That makes them much more approachable. Okay, so if you contact the CEO or the manager or the owner or whoever is running the show, and you say, hey, just so you know, I have some skills. I know a bit about your company. I know you do this kind of work. I'm qualified to do that work. I love doing that work. And if ever you're looking for somebody, just remember my name. Okay, let me know. Thanks. That's all. They'll be very, very responsive to that. They'll be like, oh, thank you very much. And if they're, somewhat organized, they will remember you. So, I could go on and on and on, but that's like, these are things that people aren't taught in school. This is what you're not aware of. And if you've only ever worked in large organizations, you come out of university and you work for like a big multinational, you would live your entire life not knowing this. Okay. I've done both. I've worked in like blue chip Fortune 500 companies, and I've worked in really small 50-person companies, and I've had like a smaller company myself. So it's like I've seen the contrast, and it's completely different worlds. And if most people looking for jobs knew that, you didn't have to go through recruiters or look at job postings, but you could just, your quest is to find the employers, right? That's where the challenge is. Okay. And then contact them. And you don't talk to the receptionist. You don't talk to the person at the worker level. You talk to the person up here running the show, and some basic protocol about how to deal with these people. You don't send a 3-page communication all about yourself. You don't talk all about you. You make it very short, and it's about them. Here's what I can do for you. Here's what if you're looking for this, I got this. I can help you. If ever you're looking, just let me know. That's it. Right? And there's many ways, there's many techniques of doing this. Okay. If this is of interest to you, yes, I have it in my course. I'm not necessarily trying to sell a course, but I have some free videos on my YouTube channel that kind of go into this. I talked about pieces of this on the last several live streams, okay, that I've done on this channel. So you can maybe look at those. But yeah, do your own research into this. Like, this is the best thing you can do for everyone who has been like, you've been out of work for a long time and you're frustrated and you're desperate and you don't know what to do. It doesn't look very promising, dealing with the world of recruiters and job postings. You need to step into this world. This is where the good jobs are, and this is where it's a pleasant experience getting the job, not awkward, and it doesn't make you feel this tall, usually. It's very positive. So, yeah. Anyway, well, I certainly got off topic for the whole tell me about yourself, but I have to sort of pick up my train of thought if I even am going to conclude that. But hopefully that helps, okay? It's funny. Whenever I start, like in these live streams, whenever I start talking about a certain topic, when it comes to employment, the conversation always invariably shifts back to the networking thing, because a lot of the problems that people pick up, and they draw attention to, the vast majority of them don't exist when you're going through networking. A lot of the problems stem from the fact that in a job interview, when you're dealing with a recruiter, they don't know you, so they do not trust you. That's the bottom line. They're always suspecting that you're lying. They're always suspecting that there's something bad that you're not telling them. And when you try and tell them good stuff about you, they're very skeptical. Like, that's the dynamic of a lot of these interviews, right? It's a complete contrast to when you do stuff through networking. I'm not saying that that doesn't exist when you contact people this way, but it's a little bit of a different situation. If there is going to be an interview or there's going to be a conversation, it's because they invite you in. So it's a little bit of a different thing. It's more like a referral rather than an interview. Okay? Like, if you're working in an organization and you're a manager, you're a head of department, and you have to hire another worker, and you have a coworker that says that you trust, that you've worked with for years, and they say, you should interview my cousin. who's looking for a job right now and they're really good and they have the skills, I would like to put a good word in for them. Are you open to interviewing them? Can I set up the interview? And like, what would you think when you go to interview that person's cousin? Are you going to be like, well, all skeptical, like, so you claim you have skills. Let prove them to me. Like, are you going to distrust everything they say? No. Going into that interview, you're probably going to start by believing everything they say, unless they say something that's like kind of suspicious, right? You walk into it sort of, much more trusting, because someone that you trust, that they're a good worker and you've worked with them for years and they're a good person. They've personally recommended this person to you. So, you trust them. So they're staking their reputation by recommending this person. If they recommend you somebody who's a criminal or a psychopath, or, they're just crazy, or there's some other, they're a pathological liar, or, they're risking their reputation. You will never trust that person ever again after they recommended you this crazy person, right? So you're going into that very trusting. That's like a lot of, that's like the networking type process. You initiate contact on your own initiative, and if it works out, they invite you in. So it's a different dynamic. Anyway, I don't know if I'm ever going to get back to the whole tell me about yourself thing, but yeah, there's just so much to this question. I've heard so many stupid responses to tell me about yourself, what you should say. And the chief among those were the recruiters who, it obviously strikes a nerve with them. When you tell people, like, look, this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to trip you up. And the other thing that kind of comes out of this, there's so many threads here, but the other thing that comes out of it is then they might follow up with saying, tell me something about yourself that's not on your resume, right? Have you ever been asked that? So, number one, that's a stupid question, because first of all, it's insanely general, right? You could say, well, here are my food dislikes, peanut butter, spinach, liches, anything from KFC, like, what do you want to know? So the answer to that is, certainly, sure, what would you like to know? You ask for more details, right? Because anything relevant about your career is going to be on your resume, right? So when they say, tell me about something that's not relevant to your career, it's like, well, I went to the mall yesterday. One of my friends couldn't make it, but it's okay. We still had a good time. What would you like to know? Right? It's so stupid. And they're just hoping that, you choosing to say a certain thing will reveal something very meaningful about your personality. It's like, I'm sorry, but that's just psychology 101 gone mad. That is a terrible way of trying to assess a person. It's completely ineffective. We have data that shows that stuff is ineffective. We have data that shows that job interviews are largely ineffective. Okay? And it's also proven by the fact that nobody does this for the important jobs. For anything like mid-level manager or higher, they don't do any of this. They only do it for jobs where, like, they really believe that one person is as good as another. It's a warm body, We need a warm body here. And if they don't work out, we'll get another person. We'll get another warm body, right? Unfortunately, that's how it goes. So a couple of days ago, I think I put out a poll that asked, I think it asked about this question. It asked, like, if you get asked this, what does it mean? What do they want to hear? And I think the last choice or something was, it signals that this person is not a very good interviewer. That was the answer I was looking for. Not that it matters, but that's what I believe based on my experience. It's like, learn how to have a conversation with people, for God's sake. Don't start with, so Tell me about yourself. When you meet someone for the first time, do you start by saying that to them? Right. So tell me about yourself. It's like nobody talks like that. It's artificial and overly formal. Right. Usually the way an icebreaker is done is you talk about a shared experience. So something like, you had to get to this building today, this physical location. So you ask the other person because they also had to get to this building today, right? That's where, the cliches, you talk about the weather, it's like, did you get caught in the rain like I did? Something like that. How, were you able to find the place easily? Something like that. That's a much better conversation starter. People are kind of like, oh yeah, well, I had some trouble here, and the map was wrong, and I got here and I couldn't see the sign, so now you're like talking, now you're getting a conversation going, right? If you have to meet in a room that's just like all gray, kind of like this place, all gray walls, gray carpet, gray, like the doors and things are white, but this all gray and corporate, no color whatsoever. And you come into a room where you're doing the interview and it's all gray and very sterile looking. You could say, oh, it's like, my name is Bill. It's very good to meet you. Have you ever been in a sterile office environment like this before? How do you like it? Right? That would be a better icebreaker than, so tell me about yourself. You know what I'm saying? It's like, learn how to have a conversation with someone, for God's sake. That's what, to me, this question signals when you get asked it by an interviewer. Okay. If ever you've been to a networking event or some kind of event where, you have to schmooze, you go to a trade show or a job fair, right? A lot of younger people in college, you go to a job fair. I see I've lost several people on that in the last minute or so by going on that rant. These are all situations where it helps to develop your conversational skills. And one of those will be like some kind of icebreaker. Being able to master having a good icebreaker is a very, very important skill. It gets people talking to you. It makes them sort of it disarms them, makes them comfortable speaking to you. And then you've got a sort of free-flowing exchange. And then that's where you start learning. You ask some questions about things you're wanting to learn, right? A lot of people who do job interviews, certainly on the recruitment side, don't seem to have this training. I tried to tack on some of that training when I was teaching them because I think that they don't have this. You think this would be an essential skill, but it isn't. Okay, so just the last couple of things in the chat. Tommy says, well, I got 2.5 years of in-house experience as a junior graphic designer. Oh yeah, okay, I read that. Any help on how to network for this? Okay, we talked about that. 400. I'll definitely reach out more. I'll be happier to hear what you think would be best to say when you talk directly to the hiring manager. Well, the great thing about the hiring manager is that they're not from HR. So they are the boss of whoever gets hired. And usually they decide who they hire. That's the person that usually gets final say, is the hiring manager, right? Hence the name. And they don't know anything about, formal HR practices. They're not trained in that stuff. But what they do know is the job, right? So they intuitively know the type of person that would be good in that job. And that's why it's usually much better to talk to a hiring manager than to a recruiter, because a recruiter, they don't know the job. So if they're recruiting for like a bookkeeper position or an engineer or, a salesperson, the recruiter doesn't know anything about bookkeeping or, sales, right? That's not their core competency. They don't know anything about it, right? So usually you would do, if you're a fully qualified bookkeeper, usually you do better talking to someone who's a fully qualified bookkeeper. You'd be able to, understand each other and talk about important things that are relevant, right? But unfortunately, the role of the recruiter is to filter a lot of candidates. Find candidates that have all these requirements and filter out the obvious bad ones, and then present me with some contenders. That's the role of a recruiter. That's how they get paid. That's what they do. That's what their job is. finding candidates and filtering out obvious bad ones. Okay. The other thing I've seen in a lot of YouTube comments that's relevant here is people say, why would it matter what my opinions are, or what I'm passionate about? I just need a job. Just pay me money. It's like, well, the problem is what they're looking for is they're looking for somebody who doesn't, it's not enough to just be able to do the job. There are many people that could technically do the job that they can pick from. One of the most obvious things they're looking for is somebody who wants to do that job, who finds that job specifically interesting. Okay? That type of work interesting. They do it through choice. Okay? They're not doing it for the money, they're doing it through choice. Obviously, they want the money. But of all the things you could do for money, they would specifically want to do this job. Okay? That's the candidate they're looking for. So I get a lot of borderline ignorant comments, saying, why would they care about, what I think of this? I just need a job. It's like, yeah, I know you need the job. They know you need the job. But what they're looking for is someone who actually wants to do it. If you hate every moment that you're at work doing that job, it won't end well, okay? We all know this. The recruiters know it. So they're looking for someone who doesn't just, isn't just willing to accept the job. They actually want to do the job, that specific job. Right? That's another part of this. I think this is like the record for like keeping it real for me. Just, I've been on some of this downward trajectory of like, being super formal, and then as I've been getting less and less formal as the years go by. It's really liberating, but hopefully I'm not making big mistakes here. I'll definitely reach out. 400 says, I'll definitely reach out more. I'd be happy to hear. Sorry about that. Thank you. Not a problem, 400. Anyway, that's probably all I'm going to be able to say today on Tell Me About Yourself. But, there is so much interest in this question. I can put out videos on answering different questions. For some reason, the thing that always gets people tuning in is this question. Tell me about yourself. I guess it's like the most fundamental, basic job interview question, which is sad because it's also the most useless. Maybe that's why people are the most interested in it, because it's the most confusing. What the hell do you say? You could say anything, Yeah. Anyway, I've done a great video on that. It's got millions of views. Check it out if you really need the formal, in a very compact way of like how to answer this question. But I just wanted to go over a few things, and I wanted to thank the person that started it all, XXX Gaming, who asked this question that inspired me to do a live stream just on this topic. So thank you very much for tuning in. All of you guys are awesome. I wish you all the best of luck, especially the ones of you that are actively in a job search campaign right now. Okay. The biggest single piece of advice I can give to younger people that are just getting into this is don't be fooled. There are many other ways of getting a job other than answering an internet job ad and talking to a recruiter. Okay. That's the most visible of all the different ways. It's actually one of the worst quality ways to get a job. And usually the only ones that are posted are the ones that are not the greatest jobs, and it's the worst process of all of the different methods. Okay. So learn what those methods are. It'll be to your advantage. Okay. You'll step into a whole universe of like, here's where all the good, desirable jobs are. And the process for getting them is much more positive. And you feel much more empowered when you learn this stuff because your capabilities go up. Okay. And they're transportable skills that you can use in sales and in a whole bunch of different areas throughout your career. No matter what your career is in, it will help you tremendously. Okay. Yes, as a final thing, I do have a course. If you want just to get the whole meal deal all in one place, you can get my course. There's a link in the description. But, start by doing your own research, maybe, if this is all 100% new to you. And, don't take my word for anything. Verify this with, corroborate it with other sources and your own experience. The best way to learn stuff is to try things and see for yourself. Thank you very much for being here. I wish you all the best, and I will be back tomorrow